Hello, this is Designing a Student-Centered Diversity Audit. My name is Laura Birkenhauer. I'm a Student Success Librarian with the Miami University Libraries in Ohio. I'm going to first share some introductory information. This year, I set a goal to complete a diversity audit of the leisure reading collection. A diversity audit allows you to evaluate your collection and gather information about how diverse or not diverse your collection is in order to inform future collection development decisions. In my academic library, I manage the leisure reading collection, which is the focus of this presentation. I buy both print and digital titles for the leisure collection. Our print titles are leased, and I buy about 10 titles a month and make regular returns. I also buy both ebooks and audiobooks for the digital collection. Just like any other big project, I wasn't quite sure where to start, and finding enough time to dedicate to such an important project was a little trickier than I initially thought. So that's why I was really excited about the opportunity to design a process for a student employee through the Ohio Link Luminaries program to allow a student to participate alongside me in some of the work of auditing the collection. Let me share a little bit of background about the Ohio Link Luminaries program and why it's such a good fit for this particular project. The Luminaries program allows students who are interested in information studies professions to participate in a paid experience at an academic library. It's different from a typical student employment experience in that it includes experiential learning, training, and a lot of support and mentorship along the way. The program allows for students to participate in a wide range of work experiences, and it's really focused around the students' interests and professional goals. This program is part of the Ohio Link Library Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative and is intended to support library work environments becoming more inclusive. In other words, DEI is very much woven into the design of this program. Let me share a little bit about the leisure reading collection. Because this is a popular reading collection in an academic library, the collection is small. We have about 250 print titles and 190 digital titles at the moment. The digital collection is what was decided as the focus of the student's audit project, but I will be sharing a small look at an audit of a sample of the print collection later in this presentation. I've received 2 grants from my library's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, one in 2021 and one in 2023. The purpose of those funds was to buy DEI-related titles. In 2021, for example, the focus was on purchasing trending titles focused on anti-racism. Outside of those grant-funded purchases, I did start to wonder how diverse is the rest of the collection, aside from those DEI committee-funded titles. When I'm buying for the rest of the digital collection, my #1 consideration is popularity. Is it a best-selling title? Will the content be of interest to an undergraduate student audience? But I'm also thinking about things like the ebook license and, of course, the cost. In all of those considerations, I'm not often thinking about maintaining a diverse collection. And that's something I want to change, which was really the motivation for setting the goal of auditing the current collection in the first place. Wanted to get a sense for how diverse my purchasing currently is, and then use that to improve future collection development decisions. Let me talk now about the audit process and how it was specifically designed to be student-centered, and all of the elements that went into creating that kind of process. So first of all, I ensured that the audit process includes shared decision-making. The student is serving as a co-creator in the audit process. And what I mean by that is the documentation that I've created allows for the student to actually add to it and interact with it rather than serving as just a static set of instructions. Instead, the student is encouraged to add resources that they're using to assess community needs and any resources that they're using to conduct research for specific titles. I've also encouraged the student to add notes. In the audit process, the student is using a spreadsheet to indicate title by title cultural experiences represented in each title. The list of cultural experiences to choose from is predetermined, but I also invite the student to add their own unique notes for each title. That way, if they happen to notice any trends emerging or diverse cultural experiences represented in a title that fall outside of the list I've provided, they are empowered to share those observations. Next, I'm inviting the student to conduct their own assessment of the needs of our community. This needs assessment is completed through a Google Jamboard. Rather than presenting them with my own idea of what our community needs are, I'm instead really very interested in their perspective as a student, because I know that will offer very valuable insight that I may not have as someone who's not a student or a member of that community. I've made sure that this audit is very much self-directed, but still includes the support and mentorship that are so important to the Ohio Link Luminaries program. So it includes structure in the form of the documentation that I'll be sharing with you, but I allow the student to set their own goals during the independent work time, which does make up a majority of the project schedule. Throughout the project, the student is encouraged to participate in self-assessment in the form of mini reflections, which can be shared in video form through Flip. Even with all of this autonomy, I remain closely connected to the student's work. I review and respond to all of their work, which includes anything that they've added to Padlet, Jamboard, Flip, or the audit spreadsheet itself. All of this is designed to be relevant and connected to the student's professional goals. Of course, some of that happens by design because the Luminary program aims to connect the student to something that they're interested in that relates to their long-term professional interests. But I'm also explicitly in the final reflection for the audit, connecting the work of the project to the student's professional interests and encouraging them to think about how this project may or may not relate. On this slide, I've shared links and QR codes to allow you to review both the student training documentation and the independent work documentation. The training documentation would be used by someone like myself, a librarian who's overseeing a student who's engaging in this work. It outlines the introduction to the project. It would share the student's schedule and what will happen in the independent work time. And then finally, it shares what will happen in that final debrief and reflection. The independent work documentation links to what would be shared with the student. This documentation outlines information about what a diversity audit is and diverse collections, and then shares the audit process step by step, along with all of the resources that need to be utilized along the way. This documentation also includes information about the reflections, including reflection prompts. Throughout the documentation are links to the resources I mentioned in the previous slide, the Jamboard, the Padlet, and the links to upload Flip reflections. It's worth noting for the purposes of this presentation, for obvious reasons, I have redacted the actual links that will be used by our student employee. Instead, you'll still be able to see where in the documentation I make use of those interactive tools. Now that you have access to all of those resources, I'd like to share a mini audit of the print collection so you can get a sense for some early results and also see the kind of results that will come from the students' work on the digital collection. Of course, the hope is that after the student has the opportunity to audit the full digital collection, that we will work through the process and make any necessary updates or revisions to the audit process based on the student's feedback before conducting a complete audit of the print collection. This mini audit was a look at 50 titles. This is everything that has been purchased in print for the Leisure Reading Collection in 2023. If you're wondering why that number is a little smaller than expected, I will say that we had a pause in purchasing this summer and early fall due to some deliberations over our budget and the contract for the collection. This audit was completed using the same criteria that the student will use to review the digital collection. For each of the 50 titles, I determined whether or not any diverse cultural experiences were represented in the text. The list of cultural experiences comes from teachingbooks.net. To identify the experiences, I relied on resources like WorldCat and Goodreads for book summaries, subject headings, and other information about each title. So after looking at these titles, you can take a look at the slide to see a breakdown by percentage of the cultural experiences I was able to identify in the sample. Even though this is just a sample of the collection, it is worth noting that over half of those 50 audited titles, 52%, had no attribute assigned, meaning that I did not identify any diverse cultural experience represented in that title. We're also missing the 13 cultural experiences listed on this slide in terms of the sample that I'm discussing here. This project is still very much in the works. Thank you so much for allowing me to share the diversity audit documentation and its student-centered design and introduce some initial results of the audit process for the print leisure reading collection. I hope the resources shared are helpful for you as you design your own diversity audit documentation, especially if it involves incorporating student employees in the work of auditing. You can access these slides at any time using the bit.ly link at the bottom of the page, and I invite you to please feel free to contact with me with any questions or feedback. Thank you.